Hey guys, Loman02. We'll be doing some Canadian Highlander content again. So over the course of this last week, Jeremy White, council member for Canadian Highlander, has been doing streams and been trying to jump in as much as I can to get my 100 card fix. So for viewers that enjoy 93, 94, old school or pre-modern, sorry I've been off it for a little bit. Old school probably just a little stale for me at the moment. And then pre-modern, well, we'll get back to momentarily, so your wishes will be fulfilled. Anyways, we're playing Canadian Highlander. Best way to describe this format is constructed cube with no ban list. Well, vintage ban list. And all cards are restricted, so it's all singleton. And the most powerful cards in the game are pointed. And if you're interested in looking up what the point system is, you get 10 points per 100 card deck. You can go on Google and look up Canadian Highlander, and you can see the full points listings. So anyways, I'm playing against Jeremy White here. I am on a Dark Jeskai list, or Dark, what do they call it? Yeah, Dark Jeskai, we'll call it. So this deck is really an aggro control deck at heart. I look at this initial keep, and I'm like, this is fine. It's got some creature removal. It's got some card selection with Brainstorm. It's got Snapcaster for recursion. And it's got permission in the form of Spell Queller, which tends to be pretty decent against counter magic because, if they kill it, they get back permission, then it's generally not as good. Although the blowout potential on the card is fairly high. So I play out my tapped land here. I don't really have much else to do. I don't want to burn the Brainstorm yet. Find a path to exile here. I just say go, so I can leave up the Spell Queller over the course of their turn, or leave up Mana Leak plus removal, of which I have 2 pieces now. Opponent's staying in time with us on land drops here. I go ahead and try to Brainstorm EOT here, because I'm actually looking for more mana, because I want to try to keep pace with them. One of the things that I think is an issue with this build that I've got here is that it kind of has a glut of 3-drops, and you'll kind of see that I get a little bit constrained on 3-drops here. It's possible I wanted to save the Brainstorm for my turn. That said, in retrospect, I probably should have. I do get dazed here, fighting against this Nimble Obstructionist. However, it's not a huge deal because I have 2 pieces of removal to get rid of it. And now there's a fetch land in the yard, so I am up to 4 mana. I just go ahead and Arc Trail this, eat a counterspell, and then go ahead and path to exile their Birdie Bird. My thinking on this play is this. The reason I go for it here, one, I cannot Fatal Push that card. I think my deck is more threat dense than their deck is, so I think it favors me if they do not tap out, or they don't tap mana to play threats, as opposed to trying to counter all my stuff, because eventually they'll run out of counters. Now that said, the long game, like their threats, their big threats are much nastier than mine are, but I have a higher density of them. So by leaving a creature on the board, it kind of allows them to assume an aggro control role, and I would rather be the one in the driver's seat as far as being the aggressive deck. I'd rather be the beatdown. So the reason I kind of fight over that threat they had and give them an extra land is because I know I believe their threat density is lower than mine, and I'd rather them be the reactive deck essentially. So they could cast a Baral here, which I can deal with the Fatal Push if need be, and I do so right now. I know my top deck, so I know I'm not going to need the 4th mana on the next turn. Correction, I don't know my top deck. I find a land though. I just go ahead and leave up Deathrite Shaman. I think better of it and actually just go ahead and deal with one of their cards in graveyard right now because I don't want to allow them to be able to delve here or build up their delve count. I do believe I go for a Snapcaster on Brainstorm at EOT again. Unfortunately, kind of failed to find lands here. My Deathrite Shaman gets incinerated. I think that's okay. It's not the best, not the worst. I'd much rather have permission underneath the Spell Queller than an Incinerate, because if the Spell Queller dies, then Incinerate's pretty live, whereas permission sometimes can be pretty dead. I just go ahead and ice their red source here. They go ahead and burn off my Snapcaster Mage. I find an Ancestral Recall, which I go ahead and cast here. They go ahead and Mana Drain. I go ahead and Spell Queller in response, seizing the Mana Drain here. Get to Ancestral, and again, I'm kind of just looking for mana. I draw, so I have another 3-mana threat, which is not really great, especially because I'd prefer to cast it and then leave up Miscalc to protect it. Find a 2-mana threat here, end up just resolving the True Name Nemesis, attacking, getting 2 in down to 11. Monastery Mentor can probably race True Name Nemesis. I do go for an attack here. Post-combat, I try to cast another threat out. It's possible that I just want to do nothing here, that their hand's just all reactive. so that I don't get blown out by this Swords to Plowshares to mana drain my Curious Homunculus. That all said, I don't know if that's per se true. I mean, I don't know if their line really changes that much, how patient they're going to be on it, because they don't have a ton of time. I mean, basically, they're dead on the following turn, so I think they're probably going to Swords to Plowshares. They're either going to Swords to Plowshares, the 2/3, the Spell Queller on EOT regardless, or they're going to just have Swords to Plowshares in hand to deal with my Creeping Tar Pit on the following turn when I go to attack for lethal. So I don't know if it was correct to cast the Homunculus or not. In retrospect, probably, a little bit of a weaker line. But there are other things that punish me here as well. If they just have a bunch of cantrips in hand, they can still actually get very, very close to winning. Now, given the volume of instant speed cantrips is fairly low, but I wouldn't be surprised if even J.R. White here would be tempted to cast an EOT Brainstorm or an Opt. Well, Brainstorm would be a little more, ambitious for him, but I think it would be reasonable to build up monk count. And or Opt or something like that. So I end up kind of getting blown out here by mana drain on the Curious Homunculus. Although at the same time, unless he can get lethal on the next turn, I still have Zealous Persecution to kind of protect myself in response to the first Prowess trigger on his turn. And I do know that one piece of pretty critical removal has been removed from his hand. Unfortunately, we have a bad news story here. So he's up on mana, which allows him to leave up counter magic, plus, do what he's going to do here, which is War Leader's Helix my face, which is actually just enough to kill me. Well, it's not just enough. It's probably one over, I think, enough to kill me. I do go ahead and try to Zealous Persecution here. He has Pact of Negation as well. Although, really, any counter would have done it here. I didn't have a high counter magic hand, and I'm getting attacked for, I believe this is 10 damage exactly, which is lethal. So, unfortunately, kind of get blown out there by the Swords to Plowshares into Drain, into Pact, into War Leader's Helix. It was possible that I just wanted to wait around and not do anything. There are certain hands that he definitely had in his range that it would have been better to do that on. But I think it's still defensible as well to cast the Curious Homunculus out based upon... the other half of his range, which is just cards that are going to make enough monks regardless, and it's better to have a blocker down at that point to stay alive. However, War Leader's Helix is way more than enough to do it, and we pack it in here and go into Game 2. Quick pause, guys, and I'll be right back. All right, guys, back. So this hand is acceptable. One of the more questionable cards, not questionable, but probably cards you don't see as often that I'm running on this list is Diabolic Edict. I like it against the decks that generally have bigger singular threats. I like it against True Name Nemesis as well. So I don't think the card is horrendous. Is it its best in this matchup? No, not at all. But if I have the opportunity to get rid of it, I probably will in this matchup, and I believe I do. But this hand's acceptable on 2 lands. It's got some hand disruption, it's got some counter magic, it's got a dig through time to get back ahead on cards, it's got a threat that it can't quite cast yet, and then it's got, removal / hand attack. So the hand has a pretty good range of things to do against a lot of what he could possibly have. So I kind of like it. Cast on a tap land, which is fine. I draw into an island here. Now, I do something a little more questionable here. I think, in retrospect, I should have just played out the Mana Confluence here, so I could have fetched differently to enable myself to cast out a Mantis Rider on the following turn. Now, quick pause, guys. We'll go into what his hand consists of. So it's Counterflux, Dig Through Time, Vendilion Click, Consecrated Sphinx, and 2 lands, plus the Flux, the Counterflux. He drew into the Search for Esconta, which is pretty punishing. But his hand, in general, it's pretty strong. It's actually decently similar to ours as far as its range, excepting it doesn't have hand attack. I draw into an Ancestral Recall here, so, never lucky right, and I go ahead and just fire that thing off right away. Draw into more lands. Pretty happy with how that ended up working out, obviously. Despite, I think, making a misplay on my land sequencing. Because I think that turn, if I had not drawn Recall, I would have likely gone for the Mantis Rider. Now, I have to leave up my counter magic here, plus Brainstorm. My mana is going to be pretty tied up. I think the more proactive a deck is, the more likely in this format you are to EOT a Brainstorm, just due to some of the lack of fetch lands. I go ahead and get rid of my most worthless card, which I didn't notice what it was. Oh, it was the Edict. The Edict's gone now. And I got back the Dig Through Time off the draw step. Opponent goes ahead and casts a Vendilion Click. I just go ahead and counter this because I know they're threat light right now, with the exception of the Consecrated Sphinx. And I like to keep the tempo on my side. And they're pretty far away from flipping Search for Esconta to be pseudo-ramp. So I go ahead and get 2 damage in here, cast the flashback on Lingering Souls, end up getting counterfluxed, and I go ahead and just try to resolve an Enigma Drake. Enigma Drake gets dazed, which is pretty rough, but we know they ripped it off the top. Cascade Bluffs goes to the bin, so his expectation is he's probably going to flip the search for his content, and then he ideally, I think, wants a land on the following turn. Because I'm pretty low on counter magic, I'm just jamming here. Because I could worry about the Consecrated Sphinx, but because I have Dig Through Time, I'm kind of banking on Dig Through Time to find me an answer to Sphinx, even if he does resolve it, like a Swords to Plowshares or a Path to Exile, or even just a bounce spell of some sort before the draw. So Gitaxian Probes here, likely looking for a land so he can slam a Sphinx after he sees what he sees. Goes ahead and casts his own Dig Through Time. I go ahead, I actually should have probably cycled Censor here to see if I could find a Force of Will. Or a Daze. Actually, no, Daze wouldn't have worked. So Legion Warboss dies. I go ahead and cycle off the Censor. Find a Soulfire Grandmaster, and there you go, Path to Exile. I do go ahead and Dig Through Time here. And end up finding Chain Lightning and Arc Trail. I just go ahead and burn this threat down. I don't really care if my opponent, Jer here, taps out for the Consecrated Sphinx, because I have a very handy answer to it in the form of Path to Exile. And we know it would be a tap-out turn for him if he does so, so I'm basically just forcing him to have it every turn. Get Logic Knotted here. Go ahead and I'd rather have the Manus Rider. The Manus Rider wins me the game this turn, so if it resolves, it's great. But the Geist is a better threat in this matchup, because it's just very hard to deal with. It's hard to burn off. And, he doesn't find it here. Even if he could slam the Sphinx here, he's just still dead to the attacks regardless, so he packs it in. Quick pause, guys, and we'll go into game number 3. All right, guys, back. So this hand is very risky. It's on the draw. I'm on a decently landed deck. This deck, I believe, runs 34 or 35 lands. My thinking is this hand. Like, I have a turn 1 play in the form of Delver. I have a Gitaxian Probe to see an additional card and see what they're up to. And I've got 2 draw steps, essentially, with the Gitaxian... Well, 3 draw steps with the Gitaxian Probe to find an additional land. So I end up keeping this hand, which it's a risky hand. I fully acknowledge that. I go ahead and look at what's going on. And let's go on a quick pause, guys, while we look at his hand. So he's got a Pact of Negation, which is not going to be relevant for a little while. Counterspell, plus Aven Mind Sensor, and plenty of lands to cast his stuff, and an Impulse. He has card selection, disruption/interaction, threat, and, long-term plan with Pact of Negation. I go ahead and get Delver down. Opponent plays a land that we know about from his hand. It's pretty likely, or I expect, that he's probably going to be casting the Impulse this turn. Probably to find a way to deal with the Delver, unless he wants to try to trade off the Aven Mind Sensor for it. Opponent plays the last land we knew about. I get lucky here. Well, not lucky, but I finally hit my land, which is nice. If I didn't hit a land this turn, I'd probably just lose the game. That all said, we knew it was a riskier keep. He goes ahead and impulses here. I actually miscalced the impulse. Get Swords to Plowshares, so we know that's what he found on one of his draw steps there. The reason I got rid of the impulse is because I felt like was beating the board as it stood with Lightning Bolt to template against the Aven Mind Sensor. Eat up a counterspell here. Now, the reason I just jam into counterspell is because I have more threats than he does, and I'd like to eat up his answers. So even though I'm jamming into counter magic, I think you have to at this point. Cast out the Homunculus. Homunculus gets countered, I believe, by one of the worst cards I could have possibly seen, Mystic Confluence, but what are you going to do? But actually, I knew about that. I Inquisitioned him and got rid of his Pact. But I still think you need to get it out of their hand at some point. I go ahead and try to resolve a Baleful Strix. He found off of either Draw Step or Mystical Confluence a Snare. I end up getting Snapcaster down. Take a look at his hand. Hand consists of a Burn Spell and even Mind Sensor. So Mind Sensor we knew about. Burn Spell we did not. Gets down the Mind Sensor. Does not attack. I just go ahead and blow this up. Now, I make what I think some of the folks in the chat, because this was on Twitch, think is a little more questionable. I think they thought I did not have lands. I actually don't opt to play this land out. I opted to pitch it to Collective Brutality, which, getting remanded is pretty savage. We didn't know about that. It was his last draw step. The reason I ended up doing that, or I pitched to take the 2 life away and also attack his hand, is because if he goes down to 12, which I know I put him up to 14 in the first place with the Swords to Plowshares, if he goes down to 12, then Bolt plus the Creeping Tar Pit is a 3-turn clock. And the reason that that's relevant is because I do think that I'm the beatdown in this matchup, and he's got Ancestral Visions on 2, which means that if all of that works out kind of the way I want it to, then I could put him to lethal a lot faster. So my thinking is, like, I've got to try to race the Ancestral Vision, because if the Vision comes off, I probably lose the game. And I really don't want to give his mana, I don't want to give him availability of his mana to continue to use Desolate Lighthouse, because the longer that Desolate Lighthouse is in play and is able to be used with impunity, I think the worse the game gets for me. So seeing myself as the beatdown, I don't think the land drop's that relevant there. I can cast everything in my deck on 4 mana. It's obviously harder to 2-spell, but I'm already fairly close to Hellbent. So make another questionable play here. I think someone would think it was questionable by throwing Bolt at face, because the Collective Brutality templates is 2 additional damage, which means that I can still get after him with a Creeping Tar Pit and keep him off a higher life total. Ends up cycling a Censor here. I believe Brainstorms, finds another burn spell. I think it's Incinerate here, which is pretty savage. He intelligently waits for me to tap it. I know he's got it at this point, but, I don't have an untapped land. I end up playing this land out because I do think I'm going to possibly need 4 mana. Whether I draw like Jace the Mind Sculptor or, like a Lightning Angel or something like that. Now, I keep this land in hand. I'd opt not to play this land out because I think it could be relevant. I know Ancestral Vision is going to happen at this point, and I can't outrace it. So I think Collective Brutality may be important at some point in multiple modes in this game. More important, I think, than the land drop for my build. Like I was saying, I think his deck is more controlling. Mine is more of an aggro control shell. And in this matchup, I want it to be more of an aggressive deck. Unfortunately, I'm at a point now where he's able to use Loot House, and he's up enough on cards that the selection and capacity of his card advantage is just going to beat me. I get a little unfortunate and draw 3 lands in a row, which, it's not that unlucky. I've had pretty good cards throughout this entire game so far. Resolves a threat. Makes good sense. Starts beating me down. I can't really do anything about it. Right now, I'm just trying to look scary with my mana up. I think it's reasonable for him to assume that if I'm not playing threats out and I'm not playing lands out, then I have counter magic. The Helix is actually pretty much game over. I'm not going to be able to come back from that, especially based on his card capacity. I draw into a Lightning Helix, which is also, it's going to buy me a turn, essentially. He goes ahead and resolves a Torrential Gearhulk, which means that I am very, very close to, I am dead on my next turn. So I have to just pitch the Lightning Helix at face to see if I can maybe draw Ancestral Recall and like sling something together here. It would take pretty much exactly Ancestral Recall, or like dig through time into Ancestral Recall to sling some stuff together. So I kind of jokingly play this out. It gets mana leaked. I allow it to get mana leaked, play out my land, fetch, cast out my True Name Nemesis, and then concede the game. I'm just like, yeah, I can block the 5/6. I can't block the 3 damage in the air, so I go ahead and die here. Anyways, pretty cool game against Jer. These blue matchups are always really, really fun. I do think we correctly assessed our role, or our desired role as a beatdown deck in this. I think there is some stuff we probably could have done better, some tighter technical play in certain parts of the games. But I do think at the end of the day, some of the decisions we did make, like including the Bolt to face on end step and the Collective Brutality and the sacking of lands, like holding 3 lands in hand, was actually correct, because I think it forces my opponent to play around more and gives me more time to possibly draw to an out. Now, after having watched the Twitch VOD of what he had in hand over the course of the game, we probably just weren't winning anyways in this last game. I don't think we had it in us to get this one. So anyways, pretty cool game. I do think it's actually pretty close to a 50-50 matchup. He may be edge favorite to an extent, but I think this dark Jeskai list also has quite a bit of game to it if it's a little more aggressive. All right, guys, quick pause. We'll go into the next game. All right, guys, back. I'm going to be playing with a blue-red moon deck here. So that first hand had 1 land. It was Loot House, so no colored mana. This hand has an island, and it has a Preordain. I'm on the draw. Has 2 cantrips, Young Peasy on top, which I instantly bottom, because I'm going to be looking for mana with this hand. It's a little bit of a greedier hand, but I know the matchup, so I know I'm not going to get turn 1 discarded. I go into Serum Visions first, because I think Serum Visions actually gets worse the longer time goes on in the game. I think in the early parts of the game, it's actually pretty fine, but, once you get to, like, turn 4 to 5, it starts losing a lot of utility because you can't, find and cast exactly what you're looking for. I just go ahead and cast Jace Friend's Prodigy into Daze, because I can't leave up counter magic at this point. The They must have drawn the Caracas off of the Gitaxian probe or during their draw step, because I think in general they would have let Jace Vryn's Prodigy probably resolve if they had Caracas. I go ahead and preordain, find a Search for Azcanta, and I opt to just slam here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I slam, because if they counter this, then I have the ability to possibly resolve a Jace on the following turn. So I get a Search down. I get pretty unfortunate here, because my opponent has a very strong threat, and they have a good templated card in Wasteland against my my Search for Azcanta if it flips. So Gideon Ally of Zendikar resolves, which is a rough beat. I cast down the Glenalandra Archmage because I think I'm going to have to attack Gideon to kill him. Unfortunately, the templating on Fiery Confluence does not work the way it used to, so I can't just use it to wipe his board and kill his Gideon, or kill his Gideon and, do some damage to him. So I put the Gideon down to 2. I figure he's probably going to turn the Gideon on this turn to attack and get him for 9 and put me on a 2-turn clock, which is not good for me. I get put down to 8, and I'm dead on the following turn. I see an Ancestral, which, if there's a card that can do it in this situation, it's certainly this. I allow the Glenalandra to get blown up here, which I know means that they're probably going to counter my Ancestral. I find Force of Will on top, end up binning it, get the Glenalandra back. The reason I leave the red mana up is because if I find a Bolt of my own, I can kill their Gideon, and that means I'm not dead, per se. They attack for 4 here. Do not fire up the Gideon of note. I would have been forced to block here as a forced block on the Gideon, or the Glenalandra. They resolve a Sphinx, which is horrendous. I do flip my Search for Azcanta. They draw 2, because I don't have an answer to Sphinx right now. I mean, I have Jace to flip it, but that's not going to give me enough time. I draw into a Mystic Confluence, and then just go ahead and concede it. I don't know what I was actually looking for off of Search for Azcanta. I don't think there's a card that does it in my deck to get back from this position. But tapped out for an early search, which in general in the matchup is going to be pretty strong. Got punished hardcore by my opponent landing one of their strongest 4-drops. I would say Gideon, as far as a threat goes, is part, probably almost next to none. Maybe Elsbeth is, in some matchups, a better threat. She's better as a supporting actor in like an aggressive deck, but Gideon just all on its own wins games, so very, very tough. Anyways, guys, I'm going to go on a quick pause. We'll be right back momentarily with the next game in this match set. All right, guys, back. This hand looks great. It's got card selection in the form of Preordain. It's got a turn 2 Search for Azcanta if we can get away with it. And it's got, Is It Charm, which can deal with an early JVP or something along those lines, as well as a Condescend to counter some spells. And I'm on the play, which means that Condescend's probably going to be able to get something at some point in time. Generally, Condescend's one of those cards that loses a lot of utility when you're on the draw, especially against more aggressive builds, which I do think of his deck as being the more aggressive deck in this matchup, but that could be incorrect. Ancestral Recall happens, which is rough, but he has to discard here, which kind of means that some of the utility of Ancestral Recall is kind of abated. It basically just became, a slightly better Is It Charm in a way. I mean, it's better, don't get me wrong. Actually, it became basically a 1 mana Thirst for Knowledge is what it became. But I make my land drops here. I've got Search for Azcanta, which I think over time is actually going to be more relevant than Ancestral Recall in the early portions of the game. I also have Force of Will. JVP is actually my pitch card that I'm holding right now for Force of Will. Draw into a Platinum Empyrean. I have my land drop for this turn, so I ditch the land to start building up my Delve, or my card count in Graveyard. Platinum Empyrean is one of the worst cards to draw, so I'm not exceedingly happy about that. I see Ancestral Recall, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I figure if we're going to fight, we'll fight over this. Opponent, I do not believe, fights me here. I think he tries to resolve like a Fact or Fiction or something like that. He goes for a Fact. I go ahead and Condescend because I figured that this is going to allow me to set up the cards that I want to draw off of Ancestral. And if I'm lucky, I'll hit a land. I do keep the Confluence, I believe, but bottom the other card. And I end up missing on land. I really wanted to hit land there. But the cards I drew are not bad. Metal Misstep can stop, follow-on recasting of Ancestral Recall. It stops some burn. I do keep that land. And now I'm up on Mystic Confluence. I could, tap out for like a Treasure Cruise, but right now I think it just makes the most sense to sit back and play Control. I think my deck's going to be more suited to playing Control into the long game than my opponent's deck is going to be. I think their threats just tend to be better. Now, one thing I've changed since is I have gotten rid of the Splinter Twin. I actually recently was rebuilding this list, and I didn't really like the Splinter Twin / Kiki Jiki combo style Blue Red Moon because it just has a lot of has a lot of cards that you need to invest into the strategy to have it work. So I ended up going with a Platinum Empyrean Madcap Experiment build instead, and I haven't gotten to do it yet, but I do like it better than the Splinter Twin build because there's just less cards that you have to have. That said, I missed the Splinter Twin in the deck when I was replacing the cards, and I was like, oh man. Kind of goes to show you how many cards it actually takes to run a pretty reliable Splinter Twin deck, and it's no small amount, that's for sure. I go to EOT here. I believe I discard the Bolt, of all things. Bolt's a great card, but I actually just want to make land drops in this matchup and just continue to get ahead on lands. I do believe I go for an EOT Iskanta here, and my opponent tries to punish me with a Snapcaster into an Ancestral, which I think is a pretty strong play. I just go ahead and Mental Misstep here. It ends up working. I get to draw into a Counterspell over Braid, which is probably not that great in the matchup, and other than for like Torrential Gearhulk and then Logic Knot. All right, my Titan gets remanded here, which I think is fine. I'm not going to fight over that because I'd rather leave up 2 counters on their turn. Now, it's possible I should have not gone for Titan to fight over Ancestral Vision. But the funny thing is, like, I really can't do any more other than pay for like conditional counter spells if I don't do anything, like i.e. don't cast a Titan. It ends up working out fine because they don't really draw any gas off of it. And what I mean by that is, like, I can counterspell plus Force of Will with only 2 lands. The thing that's challenged is I can't pay for, like, Censor or Daze or, like, Mana Leak that way. And I don't think Izzet Charm is going to be that relevant in the matchup. I do end up getting Madcap Experiment over pretty much nothing with Iskanta the Sunken Ruin, but it's going to get discarded at some point, likely to the Izzet Charm. They go on the burn plan here against the Inferno Titan. They have Electrolyzed their last burn spell, and I'm able to Force of Will it here. I figure Titan is worth protecting because it's something they just have to deal with, and there's not many cards in their deck, that can outrace it, so they have to answer it, I think. And if they had Swords to Plowshares or Path to Exile, I think we would have seen that happen. I draw into a Consecrated Sphinx here, which is pretty great as well, but the game, I think, ends before that. They go ahead and preordain, don't find what they needed to. Could try to go for a Loot House here, but at the end of the day, I think they just pack it in because I have the onboard advantage. I have the Iskanta for card advantage, and even if they're up a few cards, it's good enough based on what they have. And from having watched the VOD, I know that off of Ancestral Vision, they just bricked. They hit a ton of lands. I think like 2 fetch lands and a tap land or something like that. So anyways, guys, quick pause. We'll be right back for the concluding game in this match set. All right, guys, back. Time for Game 3 of Blue Red Moon versus Jeskai Control. Opponent Gataxian Probes. So they have perfect knowledge here. My mana's a little screwy on this one. I do end up drawing into a land. I think I actually put Fire Ice second from top as opposed to Force of Will. Because I really don't want to. I don't want to have to force until I need to protect like one of my threats. Jace is kind of my threat, so I'm really looking to set him up here. Draw into a Force, and what I'm thinking about doing with the ice half of Fire Ice is tapping one of their lands and then trying to resolve a Jace. And I'm planning on probably actually using Factor Fiction on their next EOT. And if they want to counter it, then it's likely that I'm going to be able to resolve a Jace on the following turn with Force of Will protection. So I'll go for the EOT on this. They stack this pile really well, I think. I take the pretty expected pile. I want to make land drops, and I want more counter magic. The Platinum Empyrean is garbage on its own. And the Fiery Confluence and Burst Lightning are really not great. Of those cards, honestly, I think in this matchup, Burst Lightning may be the most relevant because it can hit Planeswalkers for a lot, and it deals with 4 toughness dudes. Whereas, like, Fiery Confluence is like, really better against aggressive decks or, like, artifact-heavy decks. Oftentimes, you're not using it just to dome people. If it could dome walkers, like it used to be able to, it would be significantly better. I go ahead and ice them here. on their red mana, draw to a JVP, which again is going to be my pitch card for Force of Will. Now make what I think Jer and the Twitch stream thought was a more controversial play. I ice and then I actually go for Jace the Mind Sculptor here. I feel like if Jer had threats, he probably would have been casting him. His mana is really screwy right now, so my thinking is he could be possibly trapped on a bunch of white cards. I do bottom the Chain Lightning. I end up topping him because I don't want Jace to get burned out. And I've already made a land drop this turn, so, using Brainstorm, the Brainstorm function on Jace is really not great. Drawing a bunch of lands, not per se great. I debate on trying to resolve a Magus of the Moon to start threatening his Jace, but his Jace is at 5, and it's not really likely that the Magus is going to do much. And if I cast Magus, I cannot double counterspell on the next turn, on his turn with Logic Knot and Mystic Confluence. End up looking again, fighting some more counter magic. I take damage here. Arc Trail is dude. Play on another dude. I probably shouldn't have taken the damage here, but I kind of wanted to look scarier than I am right now. By taking the damage. And I don't think my life total is actually that relevant in the matchup. I think once one of us establishes control, the other one's just going to die. I don't think it's that likely that he's going to burn me out from 14. That's why I ended up shocking in there. I shocked just to make him play around more. Find a fetch land, which is great because I get to get rid of some of the useless cards in my hand. Legion Warboss gets burned out here, I believe, by a Braid. I'm cool with that. Not a big deal. Could fight it, but I don't think it's worth it. Opponent cast even Mind Sensor. I get to Electrolyze on EOT, which is awesome. Just good value. I put Jace back down to 3 as well, which means any 3 damage burn spell is really live off my top deck. Opponent cast Consecrated Sphinx. I opt to fight it with Logic Knot. The reason I use Logic Knot over Sinister, Sinister Sabotage, is because I want to play around Miscalculation. What it does not play around is Mana Leak, which I think is what we find. I end up doing this for 4. I don't think my opponent's playing Simian Spirit Guide. So the Consecrated Sphinx does resolve here. We get Mana Leak, can't pay 3. I go ahead and bounce this on upkeep and draw 2 cards. He Force of Wills, but I have Sinister Sabotage here to get rid of the Force of Will, find a Force Spike, put it in the graveyard, draw into a gas amount of card, or some great gas. Now, I make a player here. He hasn't been using his Jace to top me, and I put Glen Alejandra on top of my deck, which I get very punished here because he actually just randomly looks at it this turn. He didn't do it the turn prior. I figured he'd probably actually be looking at his own cards to see if he could find some gas. So I got very punished there. I should have I should have put the Brainstorm on top of my deck and the Glen Alejandra beneath it. So misplay, punt on my part. I figured he was probably going to look for gas, though. I see an Inferno Titan. That's great. They cast a Resto here. I actually just go ahead and get this because I don't want them to hit my Jace and be able to burn my Jace out. Well, it's a 2, which is pretty likely. So I mana drain that. Still have a Disallow up. I have counter spells for days. The only real dead card or not great card is a Braid. Opponent, again, tries to resolve the Consecrated Sphinx. I go ahead and disallow it, and he is evidently out of counter magic. So at a minimum, when he topped me with the Jace to get rid of my Glen Alejandra, it did come at a slight cost. I get 4 mana off of the mana drain. End up casting out the Inferno Titan, doming the Jace down to 2. Play out the Search for Azcanta. And at this point in the game, I feel pretty good. I have a counter spell in the form of Snapcaster. I have a Soon to Flip, Search for Azcanta, and I have Brainstorm if everything just goes to hell. Opponent cast Vendilion Click. I try to fight this actually because I really don't want them to. I'd rather them not. One, I need to because they're just going to get rid of the Snapcaster regardless. They have a negate, though, so they found negate, which is good on them. They go ahead and look at my hand. They actually get rid of the Brainstorm, which I'm a little shocked by. They path to exile my Titan, which is fine. I find a Flame Slash. I actually keep the Flame Slash, flip the Search for Azcanta, look, end up finding Ancestral Recall, draw, get 2 islands plus a Spell Pierce, remove their board, kill their Jace, and at this point the game's kind of over. I don't think there's many cards they can top deck. They cycle a Miscalc, play a land, I think, because I think they're just under and over it at this point. They probably should have left it in their hand for Desolate Lighthouse or Loot House, as they call it, but I don't think it's relevant. I think right now we've got such a lock on cards We have the onboard Jace, we have the Azcanta, we have the threats, we have the land, we have the mana count, and we have more cards in hand, which basically equates to, generally speaking, a game win unless I have really bad cards in hand and I just miss off of search. So Jer goes ahead and packs it in there, and we end up getting this this match number 2 against Jer. Anyways, guys, quick pause, and I'm going to go into some further matches that I got to play against actually Ben Wheeler a little bit later on off of Twitch. All right, guys, back. This time I'm playing Blue-White Miracles. This is one of my own brews. I keep this hand. This hand's greedy, but I know what my opponent's playing. I ended up loaning Ben the deck. So I know what he's on, which, is maybe a little cheaty face, but at the same time, like, I'm on the play. I have a Mystical Tutor, which is going to go for an Ancestral Recall. And hopefully Ancestral Recall will find me some lands. Because this hand is greedy otherwise, but if Ancestral Recall finds me lands, I feel like I probably am going to have a hard time losing here with this hand. So if Fyndhorn Elves hits the board, I go ahead and Mystical Tutor for an Ancestral. And I find nothing. I end up actually getting rid of the... So here's my consideration here. I end up getting rid of the Timely Reinforcements. Because I don't, in general, think Life Total is going to be that relevant in this matchup. I think, because he's kind of a combo mid-range deck. Like, I was talking about the deck, and like I kind of feel like, in a way, the deck plays out kind of like as a Sandy B deck, except for it plays a lot better cards. The way it combos down is with Infinite Recursion of Time Walk. So it's pretty powerful that way. I could have also considered getting rid of Terminus, but based on how that Ancestral went, like, I know I'm going to have to get lucky to win this. So I'm kind of the mind that, like, you keep the Terminus so that if you find Brainstorm or get into a situation where you can Jace, you can put the Terminus back on top of the deck and then get a huge amount of card advantage off of the Terminus. That's kind of why I don't get rid of Terminus here. Find my land, which is a big game. They have Glen Alondra coming off the top ropes, and I'm hoping they don't find blue mana. They do not, but blue mana is forthcoming on the following turn. They don't cast anything into my cards, but it's a good play by them because I'm probably pretty obviously on counter magic here. I pick up the fetch, pick up an island after that, so now I'm hitting my lands pretty well, it means at least we can possibly play a game. But they continue to play really intelligently against me and just, smack me around with their onboard advantage. And now I'm kind of racing to get land drops so I can do some cool stuff with the Mystic Confluence and bounce their man land and all their stuff. I am going to cycle for no value the Nile Spellbomb at EOT. Actually, correction, in response to attack, I do that because I'm looking for like a Swords to Plowshares or a Path to Exile. Or possibly like a Brainstorm, and I guess I can't do any shenanigans where like I Terminus on their turn here. Moto may be having a moment, guys. Yeah, it looks like Moto's having a moment. Let me go on a quick pause. I'll be right back, guys. All right, guys, back. So what ended up happening here, and Moto ended up freezing up, or I just didn't remember the play. I ended up finding Underground Sea, cycle Denial Spellbomb. Don't find anything relevant. And what I'm looking to do is, and I don't find a land either, I forget what I find, but go to my next turn, I'm hoping to draw a land so I can bounce their threats if they try to attack me. Because ostensibly they're going to be down to 3 lands at that point, but unless they have Time Walk in hand, I can possibly come back from that with something along the lines of like Fractured Identity, and or just, bounce their team. If they play the Catacomb main 1, then possibly I don't have to worry about Treetop on the following turn either from the bounce off Mystic Confluence. My guess would be Wheeler is probably not going to play a land main 1 unless he can do it off the top of his deck. So I don't know. I don't know how good Confluence would have been. I mean, it's going to be good enough to keep me alive, and then possibly I probably don't bounce everything. I probably just bounce the Treetop Village and the Courser of Crufix. And that said, I would have tried to go into like a Terminus turn, like try to find a way to put Terminus back on top of my deck or find enough mana to cast it. All that said, though, we just didn't get there. We failed to find our 5th land and just die. Horrible, horrible death here on Miracles. Anyways, guys, quick pause. We'll be back for game number 2 in this match against Ben. All right, guys, I'm back. This hand is more like it. So this hand has perfect mana. It's got a turn 2 counter, it's got an Absorb, it's got a Cryptic Command, and it's got a Force of Will in case everything goes to hell. The one thing it is lacking is it doesn't have a threat, and it doesn't have a, other than like the Cryptic Command, it doesn't have a way of accruing card advantage. So it's lacking a few things, but it's not going to die. It's going to have time to draw some cards. Obviously, let the birds happen because I have no answer to it. So I find Search, and I'm like, this is a threat. Like, Search is basically a threat. The one downside to this play is that if they have the card that I fear most, which is Birthing Pod. I remember I was talking to him, I was like, man, that's what I feared the most. Because I really did not want to have to Force of Will here. I wanted to save it for later. But I have to force Birthing Pod. I end up keeping the island because more and more lands are going to benefit me over time due to having Search in play. And once Search flips, you want as much mana as you can possibly have. I absorb the Reclamation Sage because Search for Azcanta is really my it's my threat, right? I call it a threat. It's kind of, not really a threat, but it kind of is. So what I'm doing here is casting out a Back to Basics. Yes, I know it's a Nombo with Search for Azcanta, but I think it's going to hose them enough as a double Stone Rain that it's worth doing. They cast out a Leovold here, which is pretty good. Find a Spellbomb, ditch a Spellbomb, find a Force Spike, and the plan here is to leave up Cryptic Command and possibly bounce their Leovold on end step. And draw a card. I Force Spike this because I want to see more draw steps and build up my graveyard. I could have Cryptic Commanded it as well. I end up keeping that as well, so I'm kind of drawing pretty well. Like, I've got a Factor Fiction. I would have liked to hit a land. I'm not going to Factor Fiction main step because there's plenty of things that do punish me here. So I do counter this because I want to make my Back to Basics as relevant as possible. I also bounce the Leovold because I don't want it on the board. Find a Memory Lapse, keep the Memory Lapse, and the plan here is to Factor Fiction on their EOT if they don't do anything that I have to Memory Lapse. So I actually let this happen. I do Factor Fiction in response to see if I can find maybe some way of dealing with it. I don't have a Daze in this deck, but looking for a Swords to Plowshares or, probably not I wouldn't want to path that much, but I probably would. I ditch the fetch land, flip the Search for Azcanta, play out another land, and my hand's actually pretty bad. I did not hit exceedingly well off of the Factor Fiction. They ditch a Custody Lich, which is a powerful card. The Monarch cards are just busted cards. I end up looking here. I end up just taking Preordain. I do Memory Lapse this just to force them to draw it again to buy me time, because my hand is not doing much right now. It just needs time. I Preordain here, find Mission Briefing, play out my land and say, go. Cast out Noble Hierarch. And I believe I go ahead and Impulse here. I find Elsbeth's Son's Champion, which I'm going to try to cast on my next turn, just to get a threat on them. This is a threat. It's a way to win the game. And I do not have counter magic. I could leave up the Mission Briefing to stop something possibly, but that seems a little bit thin. They go ahead and get the Sylvan Ranger, which is going to give them an additional mana source, give them a swamp here. They reanimate the Reclamation Sage, get rid of the Back to Basics, which does free up my Azcanta the Sunken Rune here. Now, I think I make a pretty significant misplay here. I really think I should have just plowed the Fauna Shaman here, and I did not. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why I didn't do that. I really think I should have, though. Because Glen Elandra is a card that is a must-counter card. I mean, I've got to do it. I leave Detention Sphere on top, although, in retrospect, I probably should have fetched with the Scalding Tarn before resolving Mission Briefing, just in case there's anything I want to keep. So I do fetch here regardless, so I'm going to use this Azcanta the Sunken Rune. And I get pretty heavily punished here because my opponent, I believe, does have Court of Calling. And I believe, what do they cord for here? Yeah, Spellseeker and a Time Walk, which Time Walk is kind of a must counter for me. I believe it was Time Walk, right? Yeah, definitely Time Walk. I make more dudes. Another thing I could have done here is hardcast the Teferi and tuck the Fauna Shaman. Part of the reason I'm not playing as optimally around this list is I haven't played around it before. I haven't played against it before. And I think in retrospect, like I could have probably won this game. Actually, I know I could have won this game. Watching how it played out, I could have won this game based on interacting with the Fauna Shaman. I actually put the deck together for Ben as well. I just didn't pay close enough attention to like all of the different synergies that the cards have in it. And I could have done a lot better here. But I ended up losing pretty handily here because I'm just, I'm not used to playing against this deck. And now they go into a loop. So they have a Time Walk turn in reserve. They get rid of a Vanifar, which is the card that I figured I was going to lose to. And then they just play on a Progenitor Mimic here, which I believe is what they found. And that's just going to make infinite Eternal Witnesses, which is going to be Time Walks looped over and over and over again each turn. So I'll never have a turn again. So despite, honestly, what was probably a pretty commanding position in this game, or a very winnable position, I go ahead and lose because I played poorly. I think I played this game very poorly. Anyways, guys, quick break, and we'll be back for the next game that we played against Ben. Alright, guys, back. So, redemption match for the blue-white deck. I don't think this should be a horrible matchup for it. I go to 6. This is a very risky hand. Obviously, what I don't like about... The first hand had a one-land hand. This hand has a one-land hand as well, and it's hoping to top a land, but it's on the play, which is even worse. And it's got a bunch of 4-mana cards. So basically, if it hits land and gets Search for His Kanta down to kind of filter the draw and get more lands every turn, then it's going to work out all right. But if it does not, then it's going to be in trouble. I do see a land on top, which is like, whew. The unfortunate part about that land is it comes into play tapped. It's very wastelandable, and we can't resolve a Search for His Kanta on turn 2, nor can we remand if we want to do that. But I think I would just slam it as Kanta here and hope that it's stuck. Opponent ends up playing out a Sylvan Caryatid. So they're up to a possible 4 mana. I draw to a Terminus, which is not really the draw you want to see right now. Part of the reason the deck is running Mystical Tutor, and you got to see it used in game number 1 of match 1, is because it's running Terminus and Entreat the Angels. Here, and it can also get Mystical Teachings or Ancestral, which are probably the two most next common targets for it. They go ahead and put a Hostage Taker in the bin, end up casting on, I believe, a Marine of Clan Nel Toth, and they have a Vanifar in hand that they got with the Fauna Shaman. I go ahead and ditch a top here. Go with Serum Visions. See a Karakas, which is great. Karakas is going to be really good against Vanifar. They get their 1 damage beat down in. My assumption is they're going to use their mana because they haven't activated the Hissing Quagmire this turn. They cast out Marine. I'm not happy about that, but I really would rather just Wrath of God the board and just get rid of it permanently. I have Karakas as a backup for it as well. What I end up doing here, I just go for the Wrath of God. Force them to have it. They get rid of Prime Speaker... or Vanna Prime Speaker. I think I probably should have waited to play the Karakas out, but I wanted to play around Daze if that was something in their range. Actually, they don't have Daze mana. They would have had Daze mana with the Sylvan Caryatid. They use Tuber Exarch to get back their Sylvan Caryatid here. I go ahead and get another land drop here, and I believe just cast out a Jace Architect of Thought. Give them the option of trying to fire up their mana land and being mana inefficient to put it down on loyalty counters. They do get in 1 on it, putting it down to 4. Well, my hope is here is they're just going to dump a bunch of stuff on board, and I'm able to get a bunch of card advantage off of Terminus here. I end up picking up Entreat out of that pile because I'm going to tap out on this following turn, and I'd rather have Entreat in hand so that if I do find a way to shuffle it back into deck, I can just, get it back at its miracle cost. I'm not going to hard cast it, but it's a threat at the end of the day. I just go ahead and hard cast Terminus here. They exile a couple cards out of my yard to make sure that Search for His Kanta doesn't flip as quickly. And then I go ahead and pass it back. It's going to be really tough for them to get out of the situation unless they get into a Time Walk combo on this turn. They cast Body Double. Body Double, unfortunately, is an old card. It's templated kind of bizarrely. You may have Body Double enter battlefield as a copy of any creature in a graveyard. So I guess... Oh, you know what happened is it's an old templated card that says may have Body Double enter the battlefield as a copy of any card in graveyard. And unfortunately, I think what happened is they just chose not to have it enter as a copy of any creature in a graveyard. And in this case, it probably would have been... My guess would be Marine or Fauna Shaman. Marine would allow them to get back Fauna Shaman permanently. So I don't know. I don't know how they would have done that. And then I could Yeah, I guess I could bounce the body double. Bouncing body double seems bad. So I think what they intended to do is get back Fauna Shaman. But anyways, we end up getting this game right here. If we get under on tap, I don't think it's really that possible for us to probably lose this game, especially with how far ahead we are on cards. And then we have, one dead card in hand and Treat the Angels, but then just tons of counter magic. It'd be pretty tough. Anyways, guys, quick pause. We'll be back for game number 2 in this match. All right, guys, back. So this hand is keepable. It's on the verge. On the play, it's a little risky because it doesn't have an assured turn 2 counter. I'm very happy to see them attack because that means they're not going to be casting a Birthing Pod on this turn or a 3-mana Planeswalker. Although they couldn't have really done it that easily on that hand. I.e. Liliana the Last Hope would be kind of something I would want to see, but they couldn't have done it with that hand. They go ahead and get rid of my counterspell with a Thoughtseize, but they're still not doing anything that relevant. So I'm kind of liking where this game's going right now. I draw into a Path to Exile, which is great because it deals with one problematic threat. And I go ahead and let the Hymn to Turek resolve. I can't do anything about it. Lose Gideon, Jura, and Cryptic Command. But I'm very fortunate here and don't get stifled in some horrible way. And I'm able to find a bunch of planes. And now I'm up to 5 mana and have the ability to Path to Exile on their turn, plus Factor Fiction on their EOT. And or use Sensei's Dividing Top to look at my top deck and possibly find a good threat. The one thing this hand lacks is a good threat. It's a good control hand, but does not have a lot of answer cards. I'll make a player here. So, I actually keep the Ancestral Recall pile, which is 100% wrong. One of the things that I should have done, guys, if you read this card, which I did not read it well. I thought I knew what it did, but it was one of those ones I should have reread. It says target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a non-creature card from from it, and then that player discards that card. So they can't. I thought they could discard Snapcaster Mage, which is why I got the Ancestral Recall, because I wanted to force them to choose between Snapcaster Mage and Ancestral Recall, and I felt like a big dummy because I reread it. And I was like, oh yeah, I could have just taken all the lands, and the Ancestral, which they're going to bin anyways, would have gotten binned. Same token, this line of play does allow me to keep the Path to Exile, which is not nothing, but I think the lands would have been more valuable here. I suppose they could have also gotten a land card, but they're not going to take a land card. They're going to try to take Path, more than likely. I guess they don't have to, but they probably do. I go ahead and Snapcaster into Ancestral here. I'm really just looking for a land card. I actually don't find a land card, but I find a 2-mana counter in the form of Remand, which can buy me a turn. And they're pretty low on gas, I assume. One punishing thing that happens to them here is I think they could have used Phyrexian Arena in a way to actually double cast Jace this turn. Yeah, because they're 1 mana short right now of doing so. Which would have been probably game over for us. I mean, if we didn't have an answer to Jace right there, it would have been a lot of trouble. I'm able to absorb the Sidisi because I don't want them to go find, whatever combo piece they're trying to find. And I'm kind of fine taking beatdowns from the 1/1. My top deck is not great right now. I go ahead and put the land on top, draw into the Portent myself, end up putting Mental Misstep on top, so I'll draw back into top on the following turn. Mental Misstep's a little more relevant on their turn than top is, I think. They cast a Garruk here. I go ahead and dissolve the Garruk, knowing that unless they go ahead and blow up, they do actually blow up their dudes, so they can play around Force Spike and Censor. But I get to Spell Pierce them here on Jace, and now they're down to 0 cards, and I have an active top that I'm about to draw here with Karakas immediately underneath it. So I go ahead and look right now. I see Karakas and Serum Visions. I go ahead and draw Serum Visions, draw back into top, bottom both Karakas and the island, play top back out, and then just pass the turn back to them. So now I've got basically all I was doing there is wasting a bunch of mana to get a fresh look at 3 cards on top of my deck. Because right now I'm just looking for a threat or a way to seal the game up. I go ahead and take Shimmer here. Shimmer on my turn. See, nothing good. I mean, I guess there's a fetch land, but I end up taking the Condescend. They draw a land and just pack it in. I ended up looking at my top couple cards. There was a fetch land, an Impulse, but I didn't really have, per se, a threat coming up. But they go ahead and pack it in because they know they're probably not going to resolve anything from this point. And I tend to agree with them. I think on a top, it's going to be very tough for them to win this game. But not impossible because my hand's not that great. Anyways, guys, so, we kind of redeem ourselves on blue-white control. I felt like it probably should have been a decently favored matchup. But I think I've really punted the second game I played against Ben in match 1. I think we did pretty well in this game, though. I think, after rebluing ourselves and kind of getting a better understanding of the matchup, we played a lot better. And I've also played a lot of games tonight, so I'm probably a little bit hazy, to say the least. Anyways, guys, quick pause, and we'll go into the last game that we played against Ben. All right, guys, back. Switched it up for this matchup here. I'm playing a Grixis Vault deck that I stole from the Canadian Highlander deck database. The deck looks sweet. I believe it's built by Pat Producio. If I'm saying your name wrong, man, I'm sorry. I doubt you're probably watching my videos anyways, but all the same. So this hand looks good. It's got, 2 lands. It's got Impulse to find more lands if we need to, which, as I assume it's probably going to do. It's got a Counter Squall. It's got Damnation to get back from behind against creatures. And it's got Gifts Ungiven, which is like a 1-card combo in the deck. And it's got Dig Through Time for more cards. So, good hand. Opponent plays out Marsh. Find a Negate. I actually would rather find land here as opposed to Negate. But Negate's certainly not nothing. I'm not fetching here because I'd rather just find lands. Their hand is like really powerful but kind of slow. So their hand has Liliana the Last Hope, which is a card I don't really want to see resolve. Court of Calling, which is going to be slow based on their opener. It's got a Spell Seeker, which can find Green Sun Zenith, Hand Disruption, or Time Walk. Jace the Mind Sculptor. So the hand's pretty good. Like I like their hand. I think it's good. It's slow, but it's good. They fetch here at end step. Play out the Woodland Cemetery, and I believe Collective Brutalius. I just go ahead and I believe Counter Squall this right away. It's the hardest counter spell in my hand to cast. It keeps my information hidden from them. Now, the highest variance but highest upside play is to just cast Hymn to Turek and try to screw them off of casting their Planeswalkers. But I don't go for that here. I go to leave up my mana so I can counter any one Planeswalker. Now, at this point, I have to negate and commit myself to the Hymn to Turek plan. Hymn to Turek, unfortunately, leaves Jace the Mind Sculptor in their hand, so that's a little disconcerting. I'd rather have left Cord in their hand at this point. They go ahead and top me. I go ahead and Impulse here looking for mana. And the plan now is to go for a Dig Through Time on their EOT. They get in their 1 damage. And unfortunately find another form of hand attack, which is really rough. So I Dig Through Time here. It's going to build up my hand size to insulate me a little bit from Hymn to Turek, and it also gives me a shot at finding a Spell Snare or a Force of Will. I get very lucky and find Force of Will and Opt. I go ahead and pitch Opt because I really don't want to lose the Gifts Ungiven. Uh-oh, guys. Looks like Moto's having trouble remembering this play. Let me see if we can bypass it. No. All right, quick pause. I'm going to go through this game because this game does not end here whatsoever. Alright guys, back, and hopefully Moto remembers the play this time around. So, opponent goes for Brainstorm here, attacks, and ends up casting Hymn to Turek here. So again, I cast Dig Through Time. There we go, it's remembering it now. Leaving what I assume to be there are the most relevant cards in my yard. At this point, just Impulse to find the combo if I need to, or to protect the combo. I go ahead and pitch the Opt. They play out Birds of Paradise, down to 1 card, though, which is nice. And now, with the additional land in play, I'm able to actually Gifts Ungiven on their EOT to get the full combo. The full combo is Time Vault, Voltaic Key. If it's in my deck, Noxious Revival, and Reconstruction, which is a cool card to be able to play in this format. It's a bizarre card. I'm very happy to see them attack, because that means they can't Convoke for something that I'm just not thinking of that could possibly stop me. I guess there's no 1 mana Pithing Needle creature. So anyways, yeah, I tell them, I'm like, yeah, I'm going for the combo. He asked me if I'm going for the combo, and I'm like, yep, I am. So he goes ahead and packs it in here, but like I said, it was going to be Voltaic Key, Time Vault, Reconstruction, and then X, just some card. It doesn't really matter. Possibly it may matter. I could have gotten Thoughtseize, I suppose, if they give me that. I have the tools I need to do the combo anyways through Abrupt Decay, if they maybe have that, or Assassin's Trophy. So anyways, guys, quick pause. We'll go to the next game in this match set. And back, guys. So that hand was unkeepable. It had one land and could not cast anything. This hand is more palatable, but not great. It's got a Whir, which is kind of like a mull to 5 already. It's got a Hero's Downfall, which is uncastable and is really kind of clunky and slow, but deals the Walker. But the selling point, it's really kind of almost a mull to 4, because like Nox Revival is not a card you really want in your opener either. It's also got Remand. I see a Him, but I instantly bottom it because I just want to get land drops to kind of open up this hand's ability to cast spells. Draw Gurmag, which is not looking so hot. They get a Sylvan down, which is hugely punishing because that card is just a beating against, slower, controlling decks like this. On certain draws, Sylvan matters a little bit less against me because I can just go into the combo. But they're going to see a lot of cards. I do remand this, and the reason I remand it, which is kind of more questionable, is just to try to find a land drop. I think mana development is going to be really important on this, and they're possibly going to just take remand anyways. War of Invention is really kind of clunky and slow, so I don't know if they're gonna per se take that if they can take remand and it's possibly more relevant. They go down to 6 here, so they've seen a lot of cards off of the Sylvan. They cast a Seeker. I go ahead and get back the Remand with the Nox Revival on top of my deck. I opt into Remand. Cast a Remand to get deeper in my deck, hopefully to find like an answer of some variety, and also to keep them off of mana to cast the Time Walk, which I'm pretty sure they're going to get. And, of course, they do. So it basically buys me a turn to try to find another answer card to Time Walk, so I don't just lose the game. I do go ahead and cast out a Gurmag Angler and try to look scary with my 2 blue mana up. They don't buy into it. I don't blame them for not buying into it because I just don't have anything. Believe they cast out Time Walk here. I don't counter it. And then I believe they have Spellseeker. Spellseeker gets Green Sun Zenith, I want to say. Unearth. No, what did they get? Yeah, got Unearth, but they have Eldritch Evolution into Prime Speaker Vanifar, which it's going to give them more turns because they're going to probably sack. Does this have to go 1 up? Yeah, 1 plus the converted mana cost. So I guess now with Unearth, they get Phantasmal Image and possibly get Spellseeker back into Green Sun Zenith, into Eternal Witness, and/or Progenitor Mimic. Probably Eternal Witness. Eternal Witness gets back Time Walk. Time Walk buys them another turn. Prime Speaker Vanifar can sack Eternal Witness into a 4-drop that does what? I don't think they have any Blink 4-drops, but I'm like 90% sure they have me killed here. I'm probably really, really dead here. So I go ahead and pack it in. I think he told me he had me. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll pack it in because I didn't have a counter here. All right, guys, quick break, and we'll go back into Game 3 in this match set. All right, guys, back. This hand looks great. So it's got a threat in the form of Jace, the Mind Sculptor. It's got a Preordained for early card selection and filtration. It's got Miscalc to counter possibly like an early mana development on a play, negate to get a Birthing Pod or something along those lines, that I dig through time to get up on cards and also get after some important ones. So I Preordain here. I'm looking for lands. I bottom 2, don't find a land, which is kind of unfortunate. I'm like, this is one of the ways I can lose, just not finding lands here. Draw for the turn. Do not find land. I go to their turn. And again, my next turn's land drop is not assured right now. They cast a Fauna Shaman. I don't have a way to kill a creature right now outside of Hero's Downfall. So I opt to actually miscalc this so they can't get perfect selection off of Fauna Shaman. I'm really hoping to hit a land here, though. I do not. So I use the turn to Impulse here and almost get very, very punished in this game. I really need to make my land drop, so I think Impulsing was probably correct there. They have Birthing Pod, which is just a huge time beating. So what I'm looking to do is set up a dig through time to find an answer to Birthing Pod at some point in time. They don't recast the Fauna Shaman, which is really smart of them. I look at their hand. It's a Snapcaster plus a Fauna Shaman. I can see why they didn't do it. They wanted to keep the the Fauna Shaman in hand, so I had to counter on my turn if I was going to counter the silly Snapcaster to allow them to Birthing Pod on their following turn. But I do get a little lucky on my dig through time. I'm able to find an answer to the Birthing Pod. I have, I believe, 3 in the deck. So finding one of them was nice. They get a Spellseeker, go for a Time Walk. At this point in time, I have Negate to deal with a Time Walk because I do not want to give them another turn here. I do get a Volcanic Island, negate the Time Walk, so that they cannot double pod here. I believe they play out the Fauna Shaman. I'm able to maximally kind of punish this line of play by using the Kolaghan's Command to deal with the both cards that give them card selection, while still leaving up Latnam's Legacy and Dispel. They cast out a Hostage Taker, which is kind of rough because it means they're going to be able to use Spellseeker again to find Greensun's Zenith more than likely. I go ahead and get rid of Reconstruction because the card is horrible outside of just being a good combo card. And then I kind of have to make a pretty card negative play here by Lightning Bolting their Hostage Taker and then Inquisitioning them to deal with the Greensun Zenith. I see that they have a land in hand and able to resolve a Jace. I looked at their top deck, see a Vendilion Click. I bottomed the Vendilion Click because it's going to be tough to deal with that with a Karakas in play. And I kind of want my Jace to be, unimpeded. I want the board to stay open. I draw here. I end up keeping the Leak and the Counter Squall. I could have also... I don't think I have enough bad cards in hand right now that I want to fabricate to shuffle, to get rid of anything out of my hand and shuffle it. They fire up the Hissing Quagmire, which is kind of as expected to put this Jace under some duress. I wanted the Hero's Downfall just specifically to deal with this land. Jace goes down to 3 here. They cast an Assassin's Trophy. I'm able to Mana Leak it. I think Mana Leaking it is more correct than Counter Squalling it, even though Counter Squall has less range in what it can counter. It's a little more unconditional in countering those things specifically. So I fabricate here to get rid of the cards that I just put back in my deck to find Time Vault. And then I leave up access to Brainstorm to find a hard counter for anything plus Counter Squall. There's some risk to leaving the Time Vault in hand. I mean, if they have discard or something like that, but if I get like a Gifts Ungiven, I'm still going to be able to get after it. So I YOLO it here. They're on 1 card off of a blind draw. I quickly, look through and make sure that they haven't shuffled it all, so the Vendilion Click can't be in their hand. I don't play... The card that gets me here is Abrupt Decay. Abrupt Decay just gets me, and Nimble Obstruction just buys them a whole turn, which is kind of cool. That was kind of cool they drew that, so it draws the game out to an additional draw step, and they drew a card off the Cycling effect as well. They end up casting out a Glenalandra and have a land, so they go ahead and pack it in here. We ended up getting in with the Time Vault combo. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the series of 5 games. I think I have some more in backlog that I have not covered yet against Jer. But very, very cool games. Great opportunity to get to play these guys because they're both kind of at the ground floor of Canadian Highlander as a format. It's really hard to find a lot of folks that play Highlander in general. I'm new to the Canadian Highlander format / community, I guess wider community. And it's pretty cool to get to play them because they obviously have a great dearth of knowledge on the format. Whereas like my knowledge about 100 card is mostly based in like the old 100 card singleton format that was a filtered event on MTGO and then German Highlander. So very, very cool to get to play them and get to to learn a thing or two. So hope you guys enjoyed the content and let me know what you think of the decks. This last one is certainly not mine. I stole this from Pat Berduccio. It seems like a good deck, Pat, if you end up catching this set of games. Anyways, guys, enjoy and take care now.